welcome to part two of a special edition of Chromatic Elephant. My name is Tyler Reitzner.
I'm Resma Minikim. It's a joy to be with you.
It's great to be with you once again, my friend, and we might as well just jump right into it.
Crack a like it.
Yep. What we this two-part video special that we're putting together. This is the first time that you and I have been together since well, this is the second time technically because we had the first part, but the special was put together not, I would say, in response to George Floyd's murder, but more in the response to the kind of revolution and things that have been happening since then, and especially because what prompted me to call you and say, hey, I know you're all over the place and you're going to be on, this talk show and that talk, but we need to talk about this because I can feel, as a white guy, I can feel my fellow white folks starting to take a deep breath and be like, whew,
that's it.
We got through that one. That was, whew,
that's exactly
that was
right.
tough. That was rough. And, and I hear a lot about, this idea of, well, now we're anti-racists, right? We're all anti-racists. And I think there's this rush to become anti-racist by discovering our privilege from from the position of white folks. And I went through this, so I'm not speaking as if I'm better than anybody by any stretch of the imagination. I went through this. I readily admit that in a lot of ways, if it wasn't for my wife being black and having a son, I wouldn't have the view that I do, and that, and I want to also iterate, for me, that hasn't meant that I'm not racist.
That's exactly right.
That has meant actually, oh crap, I see now where I am and how I've always been that way, and where and how I grew up in this sense of not white privilege, as you put it, white advantage, and in a system that was designed for this.
That's right.
And so, for the second part, we were looking at this article that was written by a poet out of London, and it's in the this article is actually in the Guardian in the opinion section, and it's by Momtaza Murray, and she has written this article, and it's a great freaking read. But
it's so good.
It's anti-racism requires so much more than checking your privilege, and I know white people, right? I know their first response to hearing stuff like this is, well, then screw it.
Yeah.
If I can't win. And for me,
they're right. And they're right. And they're absolutely right. They can't win because their definition of winning is some type of participation ribbon, right? The definition of winning is there is a end to this. And when white people throw up their hands and say, well, it's just too much, I can't, it's so hard, I can't win. Right, you can't. But what you can do is become more human. What you can do is do what you need to do with other white people. So the system that currently steals land, the system that currently gives my kids Flint water to drink, that puts babies in cages, that all you have to do to be complicit with it is do and say nothing, that all you have to do to be complicit with it is not develop a culture, not one-offs. The days of one-offs, the days of well, I did it for 6 months and now I'm those days, nobody cares who you march with or how much money you get. Are you in the mix, and are you developing the capacity to dismantle this? That's it. Everything else is a declaration. These declarations, it's the same way. It's the same way back in the day when I had gotten into it with this white boy once in a bar, and he tells after it all got said and done, And after he, dealt with the repercussions, his boy called the police, right? When his boy showed up, me and my dudes are sitting there and we're like prepared to, to go to, go to jail to deal with these. And so luckily, not luckily, but there was a Latino brother and a black dude who showed up, two cops, right? And so when the white boy is saying all of this stuff, da 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 da, this is what he did, this is what he did, this is what he did. Um, um, uh, Dude came over to me and said, well, the Latino brother came over to me and said, well, what happened? So I told him what happened, right? I said, well, da da da. Dude called me out my name. He said, I said, what you said? I said, he called me, he called me that,
Hmm.
and I told him, go someplace with that man, and you've been drinking, going someplace, and he did listen. Came again, he said it again, and I said, okay, okay. And then I left him alone, and then he came back around. And then I said, that's when I handed him. I said, then he brushed up against me, and I said, that's when I handed him a two piece, right?
Hmm.
And dudes, uh, when when uh, when the cop went back to dude and said, did you brush him or did you push him? And he said, yeah. He said, did you call him an N word? They call him the N word, and dude goes, I'm not a racist. So he didn't even answer the questions. He just said, I'm not a racist. So here's the deal. You don't get to determine if you're a racist or not, right? I get to determine that in each moment in time, right? Because your ability to judge who you are in terms of racism has proven to be has proven to be false. You don't have a good eye to determine whether or not something is racist because you
Hmm.
have not had to deal with the intricacies of what racism actually does to me and my people. So when you say I'm not a racist, you're basically saying to me as a black man, I can't trust you. You won't even go as far as looking at the fact that you benefit from a system that's predicated on race, and at the top of that race hierarchy is you, and you won't even own that.
And I think that's been, for me, that's where I've learned the most about myself is because what you just described is I am not a racist. Like that whole situation you described, right?
Yep.
Because when I see, um, you know, George Floyd on the ground, 8 minutes, 46 seconds, with a white man putting his knee on there. What is it? I forget the cop's name. Is it Chauvin?
Chauvin.
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 His knee on George Floyd's neck and the look on his face, right?
That's it.
My first reaction is that guy's a monster. Like he's a monster.
Right.
And the reason I'm doing that is to separate. Like I'm not
Exactly right.
anything like him. I'm
Exactly
not
right.
so I'm not racist. Even though the guy who I'm not racist. Even though he used
That's
the
right.
N word when
That's
at
right.
you,
That's right.
because what I've learned is for me to understand how to not be racist, how to be anti-racist, I guess, is to actually understand what the hell I have in common with these people.
Exactly right. Exactly
And
right.
as you put it, get close to the flame
That's
and
it. Get close to the
figure
flame.
because it is not comfortable to think,
That's right.
oh, I could, you know, I have what do I have? It's not so much what makes me different as what makes me like this guy.
Yeah, exactly
And
right.
because if I don't know that
That's right.
and shit hits the fan,
Yep.
stuff's going to kick in,
That's right.
and I don't want that to kick in.
Exactly. And that's where the culture building comes in at, right? Because if you don't even acknowledge, it's not if it's going to happen, it's when it's going to happen, right?
Yeah.
And so the process that you're going through, actually, that you're trying to go through, actually is a process that can actually develop humility. The other process does not develop. The divorcing of yourselves from the lynching pictures, divorcing yourselves from the daughters of the Confederacy, the divorcing of yourselves from the women of the KKK, divorcing yourselves from that does me no favors. right? Because it doesn't help you develop the humility that you need in order to actually dismantle this. And so a lot of white anti-racist advocates and all that different type of stuff have not don't have divorced themselves from those people, from those horrible people, and they are really of no use to me as a black man, right, and to my people, because what ends up happening is that you won't, because you won't own that, you won't see the blind spots when they come up, and so therefore it puts the onus on me to be in relationship with you. In order for me to be in relationship with you, I need to catch your blind spots, right? So you have actually put me in another position, but yet you say you support me and you say you love me. You put me in the position to take care of your white butt once again.
Hmm. That's why it's not just going to happen if we change laws, change
Mm-hmm.
policy, change.
Mm-hmm.
We have laws right now. I
Mm-hmm.
can't go out and murder black people according to the law, and yet
Yep.
we have
That's right.
plenty of people walking around. It took, and not even just police, right?
Mm-hmm.
Ahmed Aubrey, he got killed, and it took over a month and huge public outcry because a video launched
That's right.
for those two people, those two white guys, to go to
Mm-hmm.
jail.
That's right.
Otherwise, it was perfectly okay, apparently, for them to
That's right.
hunt down a black man jogging in a neighborhood.
Listen, self-deputizing, white people self-deputizing themselves is as old and older than America, right? White people, because they have, poor white people, the middle class white people, because they have bought the elite white bodies understanding um, of of race, right? Because they've bought a hook, line, and sinker, they protect it, right? And one of the primary ways that they do it is that they self-deputize themselves. George Zimmerman self-deputized himself, right? Um, the lynching mob self-deputized themselves. That's a part of the destruction of the black body, is for white bodies to self-deputize themselves, right? When you're watching Amy Cooper do what she's doing to that black bird watcher, when you're watching her do that in Central Park, what you're watching is her self-deputizing herself. That is as old, that's a very old strategy in white culture that never goes examined. They don't, white people don't even examine themselves, right?
Oh,
And this is why I say the white gaze is not a good arbiter of whether or not you are a ally, which I don't even believe we should be using that word. How are you going to be an ally? And this crap has been going on for 400 years, 500 years if you talk about indigenous people, right? All over the world. The idea of white body supremacy serves and has utility all over the world. Every place that the five superpowers went, they utilized some aspect of white body supremacy. The Belgium used it. England used it, France used it, Portugal used it, Spain used it, right? They used the apparatus of white body supremacy for their own self-interest, to continue to make money, continue to support the church, to continue to usurp land, right? Continue to have free labor. That was the whole piece, right? And so white people don't even want to examine that,
they
but
also,
yet you gonna tell me you're an ally?
well, and they, so let me, if you will, indulge me, because I want to get back to that ally thing. Because yeah, but just to go off of you know, the Amy Cooper um, and Ahmed Ob, like,
Yeah,
it's not even a deputizing. Like, there's some, like, there was recently, and I can't remember this couple. I don't remember the full story. There's so many of
yeah,
them that
yeah. I know
pop
which
up.
one you're talking about.
The
Yeah,
couple that were in the grocery store or
yeah.
something, or restaurant, and the black family comes out and they talked or
No, they were in a
something.
they were in a parking lot.
Yes.
Um, and the guy backed up, but he hit hit the girl, who was behind him. He just pulled out and hit her, and
Yes.
she hit the car.
Yes.
Yeah,
And then the wife got out with the gun and
yeah,
pointed it at people.
yeah,
And
yeah,
and that's the thing, man, is there are laws, there are policies. You can't just do that. And
yeah.
it still doesn't save lives because in
Right,
the moment,
right, right.
something else kicks in.
Yes,
And
that's it.
if you don't, if you're like, I'm, and in her, she's been, I've seen her on, the
Yeah,
thing that got me about it is she's like, I'm not a racist. She's been on the shows and stuff crying.
yeah.
I'm not a racist. It just
Yeah.
escalated. Why did it escalate so quickly? And
That's
why did it come to, I need to get my gun out?
that's right. That's
Why
right.
did that
That's right.
happen? Because somebody
Right.
hit the back of your car?
Yeah. And see, that's the type of stuff that goes unexamined in a collective way and in a
Hmm.
communal way, right? It Lord knows it's not going to go in it's not going to go examined with that white woman. But imagine if there was a culture that would hold her accountable to somatic abolitionist principles, ideas, understanding, have her begin to work through that so she can actually unhook how that happened.
Yeah.
There's currently no culture that exists that where she can actually unhook that. Personally, I don't give a fuck if she unhook it. I hope she goes
I
to
know.
fucking jail. I hope I hope Amy Cooper goes to fucking jail. Everybody's talking about, well, she done lost this, that, and the other. I hope she loses more. Black people have been losing their lives over that dumb shit that she does, that she did, right? And
Hmm.
and so this white woman gets out of the car. And not only did she get out the car, but her husband get out. They both got out the car with guns, right? And then they say, "I'm in danger," as they're pointing a gun at a woman who's holding a phone. I'm in danger. And then she
With
begins
her
to
kids right there.
listen. That woman, I've been weapons trained. So that woman who was there, who did that, she's been trained. You can tell. She found her. She put her back up against the. She started to move her back up against the truck. She started to create angle. She created an angle between the child and the mom, right?
Hmm.
Because so she can see out of periphery who's coming where. She knew her she knew her husband had her six, right? And so that's what that woman was lethal. That woman was lethal. But and here's the fucked up part about her is that she was actually, if she really was about that safety, let's say she felt that she was unsafe, which it was bullshit. She wasn't. She felt unsafe anyway with a black body. This didn't have anything to do with the situation, right?
Yeah,
It had everything to do with the culture and how that
exactly.
is imprinted in the white people to confuse, to conflate being unsafe with being uncomfortable. They're not the same thing.
No.
So she was in her car, and then she got out of her car and put herself, quote unquote, in an unsafe situation. But yet she used lethality to do it. This is the brutality always underneath fragility. It is always there when we talk about white bodies, right?
Hmm.
The brutality is always there in a lethal capacity. And black people know it, and Latino people know it, and indigenous people know it. And that's why we want y'all to calm the fuck down. That's why when shit starts to happen, some of us will try and take care of you because we know the level, and we know that that fragility is actually tied to structure.
Hmm.
So Amy Cooper knew her ass wasn't out here by herself. She knew that she could call the police and the police would come and they would support her simply for being in the white body. That is an advantage. That's the advantages that I'm talking about,
Hmm.
right? And white people know it. I'm no longer of the idea that white people don't know it. I believe they know it and they can acknowledge it at the same time, right?
Yep.
That's why they feign. That's why they cry. That's why they do all of that shit because there's a piece of real intrinsic knowing, and that's where the brutality lies. But white people don't want to develop a culture to do that. What they want to do is become an anti-racist practitioner, and then therefore get laurels imbued to you around your wokeness or your ability to navigate this idea of race, but never develop a culture.
And instead, And that's where this article, talks about the, acknowledging privilege does nothing. Um, especially when what this article points out is the massive damage that that privilege has done
Yes.
over hundreds of years. I mean,
Hmm.
enough damage. The transatlantic slave trade.
Hmm.
It
Hmm.
people, white folks don't know or don't typically know that literally for over a century stunted and decreased the population of an entire continent, the
Exactly
largest
right.
continent on the planet, by the way.
Exactly right.
And
Exactly right.
that's when you think about that, that's insane. And not to mention the genocide inflicted on the Americas
That's right.
was so great it impacted the environment, the physical
That's right.
environment of the planet.
Right. Right. Listen, there's a debt to be paid, right? And white people know it.
Hmm.
White people know that there's a debt that the five the Belgians, Belgium, France, England, Spain, and Portugal, that that they had an agreement called the Doctrine of Discovery, and that is if I showed up to a land that was inhabited by people that were considered to be savages or non-human, you have just discovered that land, right? And if I did before you did, then these other four countries needed to leave us alone,
Hmm.
right? And so off top, you're talking about the supremacy of the white body, because what determines whether or not those lands for your own self-interest are taken over, what determines is the presence of of non-humans, right?
Yep.
And so white people with that debt from exterminating 8 million Arawak people, that debt from cutting off limbs for in terms of Belgium, cutting off limbs with Leopold,
Hmm.
like all of that stuff is a debt to be paid. But you, as white people, want to act like what happened before me.
Hmm.
Not that I got advantaged from that. Not that the fact that black GIs came home and couldn't take advantage of the bills, that the FHA loans in order to build wealth, which is one of the ways that people build wealth in this country is through land, right? Well, black people couldn't take advantage of those things.
Hmm.
Not the fact that I got cheated out of 40 acres and a mule. Not the fact that every time we did have successful communities, successful economic communities, white folks burned them down and killed everybody in the towns, right? Those debts are not, from a white point of view, those debts um, were wiped away the moment that they decided that they were wiped away, right?
Well, we
You know,
decided to free people.
you see what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
You see what I mean? That those stories actually retard white people.
Hmm.
They actually thwart white people. Those stories around the Southern rebel soldier, the fucking people who lost the fucking war. We have 1,500 uh, uh, statues all over the country to bait to the losers, to the losers. Right. I
Hmm.
mean, but before you even go into whether it's a tribute to whether it was about enslavement, or before you even go in there, name me any other place that has a tribute to the losers. Germany doesn't have a tribute to the losers. They have a dedicated contextual, a fierce dedicated contextual story and narrative around what Dachau is,
Hmm.
right? What the camps were, right? They and you go there and you learn that piece,
And
right?
they,
But
they
I have to walk around. I have to
mhm.
walk around with streets named after the people who murdered and raped my ancestors. Get the fuck out of here.
Uh, and and there's cities named after people who not only owned slaves but who murdered and created genocide on indigenous people
Yeah,
just
but I
to
should just
get the
eat that.
resources. But yeah, we
We
should
should
just
we should just eat that, right? And see, what I'm saying is that what you just said is not a problem for Black and Indigenous people. It is a problem for white people.
yes.
And so when you come and tell me you're an ally and you haven't done that, you haven't examined that, and I don't mean individually, I mean with other people that look like you. If you don't tell me you're doing that, I can't mess with you. You are a danger. Even if it ain't right now, eventually you will pose a threat to my overall well-being.
And I think, when you brought up Germany, or you bring up you talk about Germany, South Africa, those are two countries specifically I've been trying to study up on some of the systemic sides of what they did, um, because, and South Africa is interesting because South Africa studied our country
Mm-hmm.
in order to implement apartheid. They studied
Mm-hmm.
our racism in order
Mm-hmm.
to implement their own systems.
So did the Nazis.
So did the Nazis, absolutely.
Right,
And
right.
so
The
now,
yeah. Mm-hmm.
now, so it's a little bit interesting that I'm going back to read through
Mm-hmm.
their their dismantling of it's, and really they are great examples, Resma, of what you're talking about with building a culture around it, because they build
Exactly.
countercultures
That's right. That's
from
right.
the inside out
That's it. That's
around,
it. That's it.
um, I guess, anti-racism, for
Yeah.
lack of a better term.
But there was, I mean, there were some. I mean, in both of those situations, there were some successes, there were holes, there were
Hmm.
things, right, right. But at least they tried to do it. People forget that there was actually in this country an American Nazi party,
Hmm. Huge,
right?
actually.
Huge. If you go, if you pull it up on YouTube, you can pull it up on YouTube. You can see their convention in New York,
Hmm.
not in Alabama, not in Mississippi, New York.
It was
Okay?
Madison Square Garden too, wasn't it?
Madison Square Garden, the American Nazi Party. So, you know, but see, most white people don't know that. Most white people don't know that there were the women of the KKK, right? That the most people don't know that the Daughters of the Confederacy put all of these 1,500 monuments on all over the world and raise money all over the country, raise money for these monuments to go up, to rewrite history, to make them look like heroes as opposed to people who wanted to preserve the institution of enslavement, right? They make Robert E. Lee look like Jesus, right?
He's a sympathetic hero,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. A loser.
a loser who was fighting to keep people enslaved.
Is exactly. But yet there is a statues all over the country
And
with that
cities
fool
and
and cities.
and streets. There's streets here in Minnesota where
Exactly.
we live that are
You
named
see what I
Robert E.
mean?
Lee. Yeah.
You see what I mean? This is so this is the insidiousness of how white supremacy recenters itself, right? And if you don't have a culture that keeps an eye on that recentering is part of white body supremacy. It is a facet of white body supremacy, right? And if you don't have a culture that is counter to that, right? Then you will look up one day and white body supremacy will have co-opted your ideas, your understanding, and your positioning.
Mhm.
And that's why white allyship is bullshit, right? It's not steeped in anything but a declaration.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's typical of what we do,
Hmm.
and there's no growth in that.
None,
There's no growth in
none,
that. I
none.
can speak from personal experience. There's no growth in that. The growth comes from really fucking digging into uncomfortable stuff that just
with other people.
with other people. I remember when we
Yep.
first started having that conversation because I was
That's
like,
right.
I don't want to talk to other white people about
That's right.
racism
That's,
and blah blah blah, and because it
yeah,
sucked. It
that's right.
wasn't. It's not. And why it sucks is because our tendency as white folks, when there aren't bodies of culture around,
That's right.
we one up on each other,
That's right. That's right.
and you can
That's
feel
right.
it, you can see it. It
That's right.
happens.
That's right.
And it's really weird when it happens. Quite frankly, in those rooms, and I've been there, where you're trying to work through quote unquote anti-racism work with white bodies, and all of a sudden they start jockeying about how they're way less racist than you are, or they're
That's
more
exactly right.
woke, and I've done all these things, and all of a sudden
That's
you're
right.
starting to
That's
listen
right.
to all this stuff, and
That's right.
it's like, don't
Yeah.
tell me how, and I'm starting to get to the point where it's like, I don't want to hear how not racist anybody is. I don't want
That's
to
exactly
see
right.
the defensiveness because I
That's
don't
exactly.
trust them.
That's
Like,
exactly right.
because you're missing, because then they're not, if they're not able to be honest with themselves, I don't,
Exactly.
in my
That's it.
hypervigilance, it's like,
That's
what
right.
else aren't you being honest about, man?
Exactly
Because
right. Exactly right. Exactly right. Now imagine. Now that's the experience you had. Now imagine what I go through.
yep,
Now imagine
I
what a
can't.
black woman. Imagine what a black woman who works for Medtronics has to go through, or a black woman who works for the state has to go through. Imagine what they have to go through if you're going through that. And because we have to be vigilant in a way in which our safety is at stake, right?
Hmm.
So that's why declarations of independence, of white independence from white supremacy means nothing to me.
Well,
So,
and I'm not going to speak. I'm guessing based on my experience with different people that it's wounding.
yeah.
Those
No,
declarations are wounding.
it's wounding. They are wounding, rewounding, and brutal. And white people as a collective have very little understanding of that. Very little understanding.
Well, I think that's a
Yeah,
good topic for another episode down the road.
I think so too. Good to
It's
spend this time with you, man.
you too, man. You too. I
Yeah.
appreciate it, and we'll catch up soon.
All right. Talk to you soon.
Take care.